All right. Good morning. It is October. So this is Monday, October 2nd. And this is First Things at First Pres, and trying to get back into the habit of giving you all a video of some sort once a week, hopefully kind of devotional thing. As I said before, kind of the exercise of this, it started during COVID, but it was to help you all think through life theologically. It's a different way of just being more proactive about our faith, and rather than just, as I said last week, rather than just watching things or reacting to the news or pop culture, all that stuff is how do you think about that? How does it affect your faith? How does what you hear in church, what you read, hopefully some faith-based stuff, what you're reading in scripture, how does that inform what you believe and how you live your life? And today I'm going to kind of go back to the summer because it's kind of coming out on streaming now, and that is give you a review of the Barbie movie. When you have a 13-year-old daughter, you know something about Barbie. But I see it's coming out, and I guess it's on video on demand now, and it's heading towards streaming services sometime this fall. So basically, just how it was a cultural phenomenon. But so yeah, I'm calling this. If you look at the title, it's Barbie, Billie, and Being. Good alliteration, but it raises a couple of things. First of all, the movie was met with some controversy in many different ways when it was released. There were people that were concerned that one of the Barbies that was presented was a transgendered person. There was some concern. There was a map shown very briefly, but there was a map shown in one of the scenes that was put a very pro-China spin on, I think, the South China Sea, one of the oceans out there. China's claims territorial rights to it. And it wasn't only that Taiwan had problems with it. A lot of the Southeast Asian countries did. Because, again, it was China making a territorial claim. And this is something we've known for a long time, which is the influence of China on Hollywood, because Hollywood is desperate to get movies played in China because it represents so much more money coming in, and it's one of the things we've seen with the writers' strike in Hollywood right now, which is the collapse of the DVD industry. And the rise of streaming services is something that Hollywood is still trying to reckon with. They're not seeing, so it's every dollar they get. These movies are so expensive that having that Chinese market becomes more important. But the Chinese don't do anything without a price, So those were two of the biggest controversies over this, other than the kind of culture war, which we'll get into in a second, which was the main part of the movie. But what I would say initially about Barbie is it's a well-filmed movie as far as it's a pretty movie. Lots of bold, bright colors. You could A-list cast, such as it is. It was just a mess of a movie. The biggest, I'm not going to try to give too much of the movie away. I like to, let you guys make your own minds up as you watch a movie, but it really was a mess of a movie. It really didn't know what it wanted to be. At times it seemed like, was this going to be a musical? There were several musical numbers. And if it drifted towards anything, it seemed that sometimes it wanted to be a musical. And then at other times it wanted to be a comedy. There was a lot of humor throughout, and just by way of reference, no matter how serious, and we'll talk about that, but no matter how serious your themes want to be, if you hire Will Ferrell to be the bad guy, it's going to be a comic book approach. I mean, just anyone seeing Will Ferrell is going to automatically just start laughing, because that's kind of the box that he's put himself in. And certainly didn't do himself any services other than he was a comic book evil character in this movie. And so that brings us to the serious point. So the movie, was it a musical? Was it a comedy? Was it a piece of, this is the one thing most reviewers pointed to, was it a piece of social critique, this whole binary between patriarchy and women's oppression. And it seemed that that's what it wanted to do. But like I said, I think they kind of undermined themselves in multiple places, because however serious the message they wanted to convey, they shot themselves in the foot by making it, just silly. There's a genius way of doing comedy where it's subversive. When I think of the best kinds of comedy that try to subvert things, and again, the obvious is Monty Python, but what they do is they make you laugh as they're really bringing home a powerful message. This was more of a yuck kind of laughs. The laughs were kind of on a very superficial level. I'm not saying it wasn't a fun. Overall, it wasn't unpleasant to watch. I mean, they're not going for my demographic. I'm not the only reason I was in that movie theater is I had my daughter with me. But there was a very interesting moment that I want to get to. But so the movie tries the basic plot line of the movie, such as it is. Like I said, it's kind of a mess. But the basic structure of the movie is to highlight what seems to be this binary. And again, you're talking about comic book. It's just a very shallow, superficial view of patriarchy and its effect on women. There's I will say the very beginning of the movie, it shows the life of Barbie, right? And it's sort of like this dream life. These Barbies exist in this realm. And of course, this is a movie that must have representation, right? So you've got pretty much every cultural group. And of course, like I said, there was a transgender, and that's can you pick out the transgender Barbie? But so they were all, there was multiple colors, multiple cultures, there were different shapes and sizes of Barbies, because every woman there has to be represented. The irony was that their depiction of the Ken dolls, the male figures, weren't that representative. There was some visual differences, but they all seemed to fit the author's narrative too conveniently. There was no fly in the ointment, and the fly in the ointment is that society never makes progress on particular social issues without majority groups joining in. You would not have seen an end to slavery. You would have not have seen an end to civil rights injustices. You would have not have seen women getting the right to vote, and women integrating into the marketplace, if it had not been for several men walking alongside women that were just as concerned. As a father, as a husband, I want every opportunity for my daughter, for my wife. I would like to think that if it was 100 years ago, I'd be in the same position. And there were husbands and fathers that were in those positions that they wanted their children to have, their daughters and sons to have an equal opportunity. So, whenever you're looking at an issue, it's very convenient to only look at the oppressed group, and kind of this whole Spartacus, the oppressed group rises above the oppressor. But when society integrates and works really well, it's never revolutionary. It's always this kind of inclusion. It's this bringing people alongside. The slavery and civil rights, it was a long history of abolitionists and people that were appalled by the idea of, and a lot of Christians appalled by the idea of ownership, and certainly chattel slavery like you saw in the United States. And the Caribbean and South America, and we can't sometimes forget that slavery was more ubiquitous than just in the United States, and something that was imposed on America because there wasn't a United States at the time. So, but anyways, that's kind of the dilemma. The movie starts itself out, and you've got this massive, this broad representation of Barbies, and you've got this kind of very narrow view of Ken. That what you can tend to see, the kind of the setup of the movie is on first of all, Barbie, the blonde prototypical Barbie, she's not feeling so well. So her arched feet start getting flat-footed. She starts getting sad, and she's not supposed to be sad. And you see at the same time, the main Ken doll, he is also sad. And he is sad because he was created for Barbie, but Barbie isn't giving him the affection and the attention that he wants. And that's kind of sows the seeds of how Ken embraces the patriarchy, and you get to the point in the movie where the Ken dolls kind of rebel against the Barbie dolls and create a male, in a very, again, comic book style, very stereotypical, what someone who was trying to make a silly, simple, superficial movie about patriarchy would do. And this is not to say that we don't see instances of male oppression of women. I just did the review of the Duggar book last week, and that's a good example of bad patriarchy. Of their, as I said last week, and I think it's a good thing to mention here is that there will always be, especially in the world of Christianity, those that take the view that men are supposed to be lords of the manor. And as I said before, it's not where I fit. But I will say that if they do the one part right, which is, husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church and gave himself for the church. That's between, that's between family relationships. But what we saw with the Duggar relationship was power. Jim Bob wanted power. He wanted to be the king of his little kingdom. And when you get narcissistic people that are, Jim Bob grew up in a very simple home, very humble home. And so he created him a position where he was lord of his manor. He had these underlings that would bow to his every whim. And that's not, that's sinful. So we do see areas where we do see, male oppression and that kind of stuff. But the Barbie movie doesn't hit it right. It's just always superficial. And a movie is failing at what it's trying to do. A movie is not a sermon. That's my job. A movie is good or bad. You'll sit down and you'll watch a movie for 2, or if you're watching a Scorsese movie, 3.5 hours. But no one's going to sit through a church service that's an hour and a half plus long. Certainly, sermons, I don't know. I can't speak for some world. I know sometimes preachers still preach for an hour, but, I'm lucky to get away with about 22 minutes. And that's just the way it is. It's hard to listen to exposition. But in the movies, movies are visual. That's the medium. That's why, I'm a book lover. I prefer almost 90% of the time to read the book over the movie, because so much exposition gets lost when you're trying to only tell something in a visual medium. But that's what Barbie's trying to do. It's a movie. It's trying to tell a story in a visual medium, and yet it has to kind of bring the whole movie to a crashing halt, about, I'd say 30 minutes, 20 minutes from the end, where one of the main, second-rate characters, the human character that kind of pulls Barbie out of Barbie world into the real world, this character has to give basically a 3 to 5 minute sermon on pro-womanhood, how bad the patriarchy is. And that moment alone, to me, symbolized the failure of the movie to do its job, because it should have been able to, if it was a serious movie embracing the serious subject, it should have been able to do that without ever needing to stop the movie. And, it's literally like the movies, you got all this beauty and all this kind of subject matter, and you've got the conflict, and, you're kind of bringing, and this is where we're at in the movie, is you're kind of bringing this conflict to an end, kind of wrapping up the movie. And it's almost like the director and the writers realized that they didn't do what they wanted to do. So they, it's like they stopped the movie and said, okay, we're going to bring out the preacher now. And this character goes into a 3 to 5 minute sermon, conveying the importance of womanhood, which but was really kind of, to me, illustrated the failure of the movie. So like I said, overall, I found the movie to be a mess. It didn't know what it wanted to be. It was bright and shiny and happy, and it really is. If you like, musical theater, you've got a lot of musical numbers, a lot of dance numbers. If you like Will Ferrell, a lot of people do. Well, you get to see Will Ferrell play the same character he's done for 20 years, so you can see that again. And I will, but I will highlight a couple good moments. One was Rhea Perlman. Remember her from the Cheers days, if you're old enough. Wife of Danny DeVito, but Rhea Perlman plays the inventor of the Barbie doll. And there's some very sweet moments in an otherwise mess of a movie where she is talking to Barbie about being. This gets us into the whole philosophical thing, right? Talking because as the movie progresses towards its end, one of the quandaries that they introduce is not only who was Barbie. When we find Barbie at the beginning, right? Barbie is shiny and she's plastic and she's all about just having a very nice, happy time. As this movie progresses, she finds unhappiness, discomfort, and that leads her to questioning, who am I? What is my purpose? Am I limited to this? And so there's some very interesting things, and this gets to the highlight of the movie. The best part of the movie is as they're having this moment where Barbie is wrestling with who she is. They play over the top of this a song from Billie Eilish called I gotta look at the title here. What was I made for? And I recommend. I'm not a Billie Eilish fan, but I did see Billie Eilish at Lollapalooza this summer and say that she's got female. I was shocked at how popular she was. I don't live in that pop world. That's nothing I listen to, but I was just amazed at how many fans she had and how passionate there were. You talk about one of the things that was fascinating. So Lollapalooza for Billie Eilish, there was over 100,000 people packed into the park listening to her, and she went on before the sun set, or right around as the sun was getting ready to set. So as the crowds were gathering, you were seeing, and she started singing her songs early on in the concert. What was amazing to me was how many different kinds of women were fans. You had teenagers, preteens that knew every song, and you had 35, 45-year-old women that knew the lyrics to every song that she was singing. And again, not being familiar with her stuff, a lot of her stuff is about brokenness. It's about honesty and pain in a world that wants a lot of dishonesty and the kind of the veneer of success, the veneer of happiness. And Billie Eilish, it seems like all of her music, at least most of it, is about cutting through that it's okay to be broken, it's okay to be wounded, and acknowledge that you don't have to be perfect. But what was interesting was you'd see not only all these women from 12 years old to 45 years old knowing every line to every song, and women in tears with some of these songs. So clearly it's having an effect on who they are. But you're seeing women with blue and pink and red hair, and you're seeing women that are, dressed in bikinis. And so lots of different body shapes and body styles, and not just one subset of a particular group, but just a wide, that was one amazing thing for me to see with Billie Eilish, is just this huge cross section of female followers. That hung on every word she was singing. So in the Barbie movie, she's singing this song, "What Was I Made For?" And this is where we really kind of get into where the movie could have been so much better if it had really tried to dig down deep on that question. If it had tried to ask from the very beginning, if it wasn't, this is why I say it was a mess. It was trying to do too much. It was trying to be a musical. It was trying to be funny. It was trying to be serious and preachy. It was trying to have a social message and social impact. But at its best moment, if it had followed Barbie from beginning to end with that question of what is, the critique of Barbie, right, from a lot of left people, 20 years ago, was that it represented shallow, superficial, a certain body style, certain body type, a love of fashion and silliness, um, and if it had kind of taken that thread and not wanted to just be, clown show superficial about patriarchy, because there is a way to handle that issue. And even embedded in that, again, Barbie did come of age at a time where there were still very significant gender roles, and it wasn't merely just the way dolls used to be. That was one of the things about Barbie, right? Was dolls used to be about babies, and now all of a sudden you have not only a doll in the feminine form, but of a very particular slender feminine form, blonde hair, blue eyes. And there were legitimate social critiques 20, 30 years ago about, you'd have children of different skin color and races playing with and wanting to emulate this one doll that was kind of a cultural icon. And to the Mattel's, or I don't know who made the doll, but to their credit, they started releasing dolls that looked different and representative of different girls. Not that there's anything wrong with playing, but there does say something about, a child looking at a doll that says, I'll never look like this doll. I'll never be skinny like this doll or tall like this doll. I'll never have the money that this doll has, let alone the issues of I'll never have straight hair, let alone blonde hair. I'll never have blue eyes unless I get contacts, right? And you've seen, even now you'll see in media people that spend hundreds of thousands of dollars trying to make themselves look like Barbie. And unfortunately, we've seen in minority cultures, especially in the United States, but not only in the United States. I mean, you see it in Japan and South Korea, as well as in the United States, of people who are different, not blonde-haired, blue-eyed, having that kind of longing for, oh, I wish I could look like and emulate. So there was a lot of social critique that you could have done well there, and that's where they had the germ, because the song from Billie Eilish is this song that hits the movie right at hits the right, and this is the highlight, the right song at the right moment, as the Barbie character is, she's never had, as Barbie doll, never had she's never had to have an unpleasant thought. And that's where it begins, is she starts to have these unpleasant thoughts. Then all she wants is the elimination of the unpleasant and to return to shiny, happy Barbie land. And the movie doesn't really address how it is. The movie makes a promise to Barbie at the end that if she finds the dysfunction in the human world, she'll go back to the way she was. And the interesting thing is that when she addresses that human dysfunction, she doesn't go back the way it was, and there's really no explanation other that they through the character of Rhea Perlman, they introduce this unexplored concept of choice, that somehow Barbie has the choice to. Which at the beginning, Barbie seems to be created for. And that leads to this very important theological concept of, what are we created for? Who are we created for? When we're looking at a culture right now that is broken, just devastated. And when you look at freedom that we have right now, where people can do almost anything within a very narrow bound. I was going to say, as long as it doesn't break the law, but even now in some cities, when you want to rob a store, go rob a store. You want to rob a person, go rob a person. Chances are, in the right city with the right prosecutor, you're going home. So we're getting to this extraordinarily anarchic kind of period where we've got literal anarchy without the overthrow of government, which is the great irony. Anarchy was always about overthrowing government, and that's what I would say to all these so-called anarchists that are out there that have all this support of government. Is you want to look around and see what really anarchy is. Anarchy is not being the pet. If you've got wealthy, power-hungry people that are subversively wanting to overthrow morals and government, and you've got government that is subverting its own self, but they're backing you, what you're doing is you're a pawn, you're not an anarchist. So this, there's this really important moment where we can all be asking, I think that the reason Billie Eilish has such a huge audience, I think the reason Barbie, the movie, found an audience and people walked away. Again, the movie is one of those like pop culture, right? It's almost impossible not to walk away from the movie feeling good, because that's what the movie's designed to do. It's not designed to get you to really think. It wants you to walk away. I mean, it's hammered you with patriarchy. Men can't be trusted. Men can't be this. But the meaningful part of the movie, what are we here for? Why am I here? The movie leaves you laughing and feeling good, and you walk out going, oh, that was a good movie. It doesn't leave you, it would have been, if I had been doing that movie, Barbie would have ended where we don't know what choice she made, and we see her at the end of the movie at a crossroads where she is torn between the simplicity of just simply going back to a world where every day is the same day, and it's fun, and it's you don't have to think about it. And by the way, in that perfect world, men are, this is the irony, it really is a matriarchal culture that Barbie's in. Men are secondary to the enjoyment of life by the Barbie world. And so the inclusion that Barbie, the movie, is looking for is denied. What they're really kind of arguing for is is matriarchy. And that's kind of the irony. You don't get the sense that Barbie and Ken were created for each other. Clearly, Ken was created for Barbie. And so, that factors into this whole metaverse of the Barbie world, because here we get into theology, right? The Bible tells us that men and women were created for each other. In Genesis, there's this beautiful passage. We're living in such a crazy time right now that you can't even talk about the creation of man and woman and why they were created for one another, but the story is powerful and deeply important to hear. So the story in Genesis is that that God had created the man, and that he was lonely. He had God, he had paradise, but there was something, a yearning that he didn't have, a loneliness within him. God created, right? But because all of our good desires come from a place where God wants us to be. But the story is God starts throwing creatures at him. The beasts of the field all start kind of lining up and wandering by, and not this one, not this one. And there's this line in Genesis where it says, not a suitable helper was not found for him. And then it says, so God caused a deep slumber to fall upon the man. He went to sleep, and it says that God takes a rib from the side of the man, and from his rib creates woman. From man creates woman, right? And as other people have mentioned, I mean, it's certainly not anything that's original here, but it's interesting, right? That the woman wasn't created from the ankle bone. Woman wasn't created from the skull or the jawbone. There's to say that the creation of woman came from his rib was really to make that idea that she was created to walk alongside him. And we saw the good moments in the garden before the fall, before the eating of the forbidden fruit. That's what you saw, was the man and the woman walking together. And then, so woman is created. She is called Eve. One of the things we find in that biblical text is the word for the man is Adam. We say Adam, we've given a proper name, but really in Hebrew, Adam is the word for a human being. And yet the woman isn't just left as woman, she is called Eve. And so she is named, and then there's this beautiful moment where Adam, the man, wakes up and looks at the woman and says, "At last, this is flesh of my flesh, bone of my bone." And then it says that beautiful passage, "For this reason, God causes a man and a woman, man to leave his mother and father and cleave to his wife, unite with his wife, and the two become one flesh." So there's this, when you look at, when you're looking at the plot line of Barbie, and again, it's just a silly movie, but it wasn't meant to be. I mean, in the eyes of the directors and the writers, they were trying to say something about the human condition. They just don't know how to do it because in this world, if you're on the progressive end, again, want to make that qualification, not liberal, but far off onto that progressive wing, you've got so many, you can't say anything definitive. You have to always hedge your bets, except for that area that you've got your enemy. You can be definitive about your enemy, but not anything else, because you tend to lose people. So you can't say that Barbie and Ken were created for one another. You can't say that, that's kind of that outstanding, the ringing of the Billie Eilish song. What am I here for? What was I created for? And I don't know if on that, and I think this is a moment for evangelism, a moment of kind of gospel, is being able to listen. You go, why should a Christian continue to pay attention to Hollywood and an industry that's so very, very much opposed to the Jesus values? And here again, as I say that, even a lot of so-called faith-based stuff has to be watched really carefully right now, because there's a subversive element within it trying to bend the arc of that kind of Jesus listening audience into that kind of move. There's this move trying to get everyone to move to this far left progressive side of the equation, just doing it subtly, step by step. So, and at times as it's appropriate, I'll point that out. But kind of wrapping this up is, the Bible says when it talks about the creation of human beings, it says that God created women and men to be in relationship with one another. Now, does that mean every woman has to be married and every man has to be married? Of course not. Does that mean that every man has to feel attraction to a woman? Every woman has to feel attraction to a man? No, of course not. But that's the normative story. It's the normative story globally. You look at the numbers, right? It still is globally far the universal trend that biologically we have reproductive systems for a reason, and reproduction happens through a male and a female gametes, right? If you want to break it down to its essence, then that means typically it requires a man and a woman, and that goes back to that story. It was ultimately, if you find yourself on the outskirts of that story, it's okay. Lots of people found themselves on the outskirts. Jesus was not married. So Jesus would have found himself on the outskirts of the man created for woman, but Jesus affirmed that narrative. The idea being that when men and women are when we are looking at philosophically, looking at what are we here for, going back to the Barbie idea, man was not created to be a plaything to women. But the other side is there. Very important in the New Testament, we see this is, the over and over again in Proverbs, over and over again is the humanizing, giving dignity to women, and the discipline of male lusts, males controlling their eyes, their thoughts, their bodies. That is so that whole narrative of, male lust is important to explain, but it works. It's a humanizing on both ways. Is that men and women, properly speaking, and we see this. Paul kind of lays this out throughout the New Testament. Is that as we come to Christ, we find the way to properly relate. And one of the things that gets lost is, even though the vast majority of the early church were married, certainly among the apostles and the hierarchy was early on this call to celibacy. We think Paul was married. We know Peter was married. We believe that from at some point in Peter's journey with Jesus, Peter progressed to choosing celibacy. It's probably apocalyptic, meaning that they believed that Jesus' kingdom was coming in their lifetime, and that a lot of, you look at Matthew 25, Matthew 24 and 25, you see a lot of this apocalyptic language that, if a woman is pregnant, woe unto her. She's going to have to carry that pregnancy as she's being hunted by the enemies of Jesus. That if she has a young child that she's trying to breastfeed, that this young child's going to represent a threat. He's not only the child weak and vulnerable, but noisy. There is that. It's important when you look at when the church, certain churches try to impose celibacy. One, the early church, it wasn't imposed. That's abundantly clear. And two, it needs to be put into the context of a group of people believing that Jesus was coming back. It's why they gave, like in Barnabas's cases, sold huge portions of land, pretty much everything they owned, and gave it to the church. Because giving it to the church didn't mean they acquired assets and bank accounts. They gave it to the church, meaning they took that money and they converted it into clothes, food, the support of widows and orphans, all that stuff we see in the New Testament. So that's also important too. But what was the highlight of the Barbie movie is this Billie Eilish song at that moment in the movie where Barbie is wrestling with this question. She apparently now has a choice. She doesn't have to go back to shiny, non-reflective, complicated living. She can live a life of doubt and fear and complication in bad days as well as good days. And that's all juxtaposed. She's having this moment. Again, this is where that visual medium, as much as Barbie failed with the sermon, here was this moment where you have this powerful emotion. You have this beautiful song, and it's a good song there. I'll give her credit on that one. And with that song is that haunting question. What am I here for? What was I made for? And the Bible has an answer to that. We were, the first question, I've got this right here. We're going to start with our kids getting through the Westminster Shorter Catechism. And the first question of the Westminster Shorter Catechism is, what is the chief end of human beings? And it is, the chief end is to glorify God and enjoy Him forever. So the world, and seriously, it's not just Barbie right now. Right now, no one's actually culture doesn't want you to think. If you think, you're going to sit there and reflect on all the damage that's been done to you or to people you love. Because we're living in evil times, when people are free to do whatever they want, a lot of people will use that freedom to hurt, exploit. You can see that in dating relationships. You can see it in marriages. You can see it in friendships, workplace environments, people doing what gets them ahead. And what gets them ahead is usually, first of all, when you live that way, it changes your heart. You either damage yourself to a place you can't come back, or you live with a life of regret and shame. The same thing if you've been exploited, victimized, taken advantage of, and when I look at the club scene of the dating world, I look at dating apps, and it's just sad to me that both men and women are just being exploited and they don't see it. They're being reduced to lusts. And the worst, just like mice in a lab, we're letting powerful people, and don't make any mistake, government's allowing this to happen, because the more we are distracted and amused, the less we are likely to force our government to do right by us. The Romans called it panis et circenses, bread and circuses. The emperors, that's what they used to do, is they used to make sure that people had free flour for bread and that there was free entertainment in the evening. And the idea was that the happier the people were, the more they were mindlessly, the more they didn't have empty bellies, and the more their free time was controlled, the better off the government would be. And we're seeing that as ever since the creation of radio. Government, you let everyone get families, instead of sharing stories and talking about the day and talking about what was on in the newspapers or whatever happened in the community. Now people were sitting around being spoon-fed other people's stories, and that moved into television and movies and entertainment. And now we fill ourselves with other people's thoughts all the time. And that's one of the first things that First Pres is trying to do is, what are your thoughts? If as the movie comes out, you can rent it now. It'll hit streaming services. I think HBO's streaming service. As you watch the movie, it's a mess. It's a train wreck. It's not coherent, but it does have this moment. And even whether you watch the movie or not, I think we can all. It's the most important question: what are we here for? And as I said, the Westminster Shorter Catechism for Presbyterians says our chief goal, what we're here for, is to worship God and enjoy him forever. And I love that language. It's not just, we don't exist merely to be these minions. We exist for the pleasure of God. God wants us happy. God wants us satisfied. And God knows that a disciplined life creates a happier life than an undisciplined life. And we can see this not only in the Christian world, we can see it any place. When you see people exercising discipline, not enforcing discipline on others, when they're putting discipline in their own life, they're healthier, happier, more content. And that's really the basics, of what I try to argue all the time, which is I'm not going to get into a fight with people. I'm going to let people, that I'm not anyone's pope or bishop. People are going to live the lives that they live. But sometimes people have to be like that prodigal son. They go out and they embarrass themselves. They bring shame upon themselves. They come back and they're broken because the world has used them and abused them. That's most of us, right? And so what you'll find with me and my teaching and preaching and pastoral ministry is you'll hear as I said, you'll hear the gospel, you'll hear the teachings of Jesus, the commands. I mentioned all the time that the commands of God, as the church has understood them for 2,000 years, and basically until 100 years ago, nobody debated it. We all kind of knew the gist. You can start with the 10 Commandments and work your way from there. But we did know that there were principles that we followed, rules, laws. That they delineate, they teach us. Paul makes it clear, right? What's the purpose of the Old Testament law? Well, it teaches us what sin is. Without the understanding of Scripture, most people today think sin is just not being perfect. Well, that's not what sin is. I mean, their lack of perfection is a result of brokenness, but we understand sin as rebellion against God and against our own being, because the idea here is those commands that God has given to us are actually beneficial to us. Some of those, you look at, there's various commands. I'll just say this for another day, but very briefly, some of the commands are about loyalty to God. Some of the commands, however, are about self-discipline and for the health of our soul and for the health of our body. Give the movie a view. Again, for the people that are wanting to protest it because of the transgender issue, again, what I'd say is that, they've got a transgender Barbie, but you'll be hard pressed to find it. Find him, her, and you will have. And I wasn't trying to make a statement there. I just don't know. It's just not anything I'm gonna. But the other part of that is the China map. It's there. It's brief. If you're going to select, you got to go through a lot of movies because China's having an impact on a lot of movies. That being said, with or without the Barbie movie, asking that question, what are you here for? For what purpose? What was, and that's what were you made for? The Bible says you were made by God, created by him, formed by him in your mother's womb. So what are you here for? Whether you're 90 years old, 103 years old, whether you're 8 years old, what are you here for? If you're 100 years old, you're not going to be here much longer. So good to get an answer to that question now. If you're 10 years old. You got a lot of life, a lot to give, a lot of service, a lot of good decisions and bad decisions. And so that's also part of it. What were you made for? And again, I'll end with the Westminster Catechism. You were made to glorify God and to enjoy him forever. So have a good day. I'll have this one we'll post today, and again, I'll have one up next Monday. So have a good week. I'm praying for you. Take care.